Good afternoon. Welcome to another session of the podcast, My First Job. We have an illustrious personality on the show today. But before that, let me go into how much of a change he's brought about. Today's generation may not know it, but back in 1977, there was a pivotal scene in Amar Akbar Antony where the three stars, Amitabh Bachchan, Vinod Khanna, and Rishi Kapoor, were actually hooked up to a transfusion and a blood transfusion machine, and they were exchanging blood. The thought of seeing that would probably have made Dr. Srinivasan's blood boil because nothing about it was scientific, but it was emotional. And that, I think, is the root of where he had to begin his journey. That the stuff of our life, the one that courses through our veins, the thing that makes us red blooded or whatever else that we have in so many similes and the same, is really what Dr. Srinivasan has spent his life on. We owe him a debt of gratitude for the change that he has brought about in the field. But let me bring him on and let him give it in his own words. And we'll start with something that this multifaceted man seems to have found the time and the resources and the breadth of vision that he has in his life.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Venu.
Dr. Srinivasan.
Thanks, Venu. Thanks for bringing me on to this show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure and an honor, and I think we'll start with what you start. You said you returned to photography because this was one aspect of you that I didn't know. So how did that come about?
Well, actually, my journey, like most of the photographers, who are passionate about the art, I still keep calling this an art. It all started when I was 11 years old with a box camera.
Okay,
But that is okay. It's just a pastime buying film and then loading it in the camera, taking the pictures, and then waiting for the results to come out. And incidentally,
right.
that also took me. I had a pretty good classmate, very nice person, whose uncle had a studio. I'm talking about 50s, rather
Okay,
early 60s in Tuticorin, and I ended up the dark room there and started learning the tricks. That's fine. Everything was going well. Finished my MBBS. Still, I was shooting a bit. Then came up my first accidental entrepreneurship of starting Lister Laboratory in 1985. That
okay,
took me away. The camera, it went to the back burner. My darkroom, everything went off
okay,
until 2006,
okay.
when I was. It's something happy happens. There has to be also something else triggering that. In 2006, for the first time, I was told I had brains because I had to have a, say, CT scan, which has to prove that I had something sitting inside my brain which needed to be removed. And
Oh,
that forced me to sit at home, look at through the window, and I realized what I was missing all these years in the gardens. That rekindled the passion to get back to photography, and like anybody's dream, buy a DSLR and all those things. I got it, and that is now keeping me alive and creative.
wonderful. So why don't we go over some of the shots that you have taken? I've assembled a few. It was a hard job
Okay,
selecting these from the multitude of pictures that you have, but I'm sure some of these, and I'll ask you to please take us through some of these.
sure.
Okay, I'm just in a moment.
So I presume you picked it up from my website natureimages.in.
Yes, visible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I've just given it a title. It's not because I felt that what you have brought out is amazing. So here's one. There are two pictures here. but it's not just a silhouette, but that lovely golden hairline that you've managed to capture. And that moment when the cheetah is just leaping off that, I thought you managed to capture some amazing bits
Yeah.
of action out here.
I have something really funny to say about that line.
Okay.
That is from Serengeti at sunset. So everybody
Okay.
was there on the western side of the line, shooting. About 10, 12 jeeps are there. But I
Okay.
told my guy, go to the opposite side. So this guy
Okay.
thought I was crazy, and everybody was saying here, here, here. But I was here because I had something else in my mind, and this is the result.
Okay. Wow. It's really an amazing shot because it's very hard to get this kind of a look.
Yeah, cheetahs generally don't get onto the trees, but this
Right.
one in Mara was chased by a hyena. I think out of
Okay.
fear it went on like Kannadasan's thing, "Ninakka therinda maname marakka theriyada." It went up fast, but it didn't know how
Okay.
to come down. It
How
took
to come off.
almost
Okay.
2.5 hours of waiting for me to let it come down to catch this frame.
Wow.
Patience in
Infinite patience.
wilderness.
Yeah. Serves you well in so many fields. Yeah. I mean, the sheer breadth of this and the birds in flight. It would have been one shot if you had captured only the birds in the water, but there's another flock up in the air.
I think it's in yeah, this one is again in Africa, and it's in
Yeah.
Amboseli,
Yeah.
if my
Yeah.
memory is right.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a question of balancing the frame.
Yeah. This is again, it's the sheer graphic nature of this picture, the browns and everything else that is there in the really make this
Yeah, the
an amazing.
boats are meant to be in water. Only when you go in, you know
Yes.
what's in there. That's
Yes.
probably what my
Right.
statement for this picture.
Okay. Again, this is so beautifully framed because
This,
there's the person sitting in the exact middle of the whole,
yeah,
and with
this
him
one
leading
is
to speak.
en route to Annapurna Base Camp. My first
Right.
ever major trek in my life.
Okay.
Unforgettable. And after that, I have done
Okay.
dozens. So
Okay.
it's interesting, the man sitting and enjoying the whole spread of
Yeah.
mountains.
Right. This was, first I thought that it was simply a streak of brown, but I think you told me that this is a sandstorm and snow, both in the same picture.
It is, yeah, it is somewhere in autumn. It's in the Hanley region. While we were driving
Okay.
down, we saw the sandstorm and decided to stop instead of driving past and wait and see what's happening. I'm glad
Okay.
I was there at the right time.
Yeah, it's amazing in terms of colors. This is there's a lot of talk of auroras now, but this is so fascinating.
Yeah, auroras in uncommon areas. That's the best part that's happening
Right.
in Canada, UK, Australia.
Right.
This I was standing in the middle of the water at which was somewhere around 3 degrees, and
Wow.
it was in Fairbanks. It's yeah,
Okay. Yeah, I think that's the part that people don't get. And this is the last image I kept it because, it's amazing how that texture looks like sheep or stones.
I call it the carpet. This was part of
Okay.
my last exhibition about a couple of months back, which was work
Okay.
of 13 years in the Himalayas.
Okay. Okay. Terrific. So,
If
yeah, one moment. I'm just.
the one lesson out of the whole thing is the photography is that especially this is something for anyone, and especially people in my peer group and professional thing. I think we all need to
Right.
have an alternate way of letting out our creativity, spending our time. If we don't have that, I think we'll
Yeah,
succumb to the current pressures and other events happening around us.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, why don't we start from the time since we call it my first job, I normally spend a few minutes on saying, okay, how far away from that first job most people end up going because they start there. or they go so much deeper that it's very difficult to, sort of, which is where I'm saying, you can tell us what
I, I,
exactly went through your mind. Yeah.
I understand. My first job was actually on the 1st of January 1981, soon
Okay.
after I passed my MD in internal medicine. I took up a position as a full-time physician in one of the hospitals in North Madras, run by Church of South India, CSI Rainey Hospital. A young blood soon after
Hmm.
an MD, and I that was a springboard for me. I learned all the medicine I knew in those few years where I worked there. And it's not just that we didn't have ultrasound, we didn't have what shall we have, leave alone ultrasound was not there, then the CT scans never existed. So it's a simple X-ray is the only tool that we have, plus all the clinical techniques that we were taught to by our great teachers of those days to diagnose and manage patients. That's something was amazing. We and still patients survive despite us not using equipments. And I'm very happy that that gave the experience, the courage, the ability to perform biopsies, tapping the heart with fluids, all those blindly with the anatomical knowledge that we were taught and we understood. It all went well, but also happened at that time in the same hospital is what was lacking was a laboratory.
Okay.
So if I need to get certain parameters done, I need to wait for 24 hours, sometimes even 36 hours to get the result to decide what line of treatment. That took I started spending time in that small laboratory, talking to the technicians there at that time. They're so dedicated bunch of people. And I said that unless I have a good laboratory, there is no way of practicing good medicine. Not only for me, for the entire hospital is needed. I
Right.
was given a I was given a free hand, so I started looking around, going and seeing places, and then see what can be done. So slowly, I was involved in building up that place into one of I'm talking about early 80s, a very modern laboratory for the hospital, which can turn around results so quickly. With even some of the equipments were not existing in private laboratories because the hospital had access to funds.
Okay.
So for donations from Church of Scotland, EZD, and all those things, it's all fine. And looking back, the hind vision is always 2020. Looking back at that time, I never knew why I was doing that. Number one. Number two, I had an opportunity at that time to go to UK to present a paper because someone who was supposed to go could not go. That's another story. So, but when I was there at the conference, I was offered a full-time job in UK. I was asked whether I was trained in US, UK. I said I'm in a corner from India, which thing. But I refused. I came back. But in 1984, I had the opportunity of going back to UK again as senior registrar, which was a locum job, which was given with all the exemptions possible, not writing local exams. That was the serendipity. When I entered there, I went on a long leave. When I came back, it so happened it was unpleasant for me to, again, the young blood in me couldn't tolerate that I had to report to somebody else who was much junior to me. So I decided overnight to walk out. So I
Oh.
was thinking what I'm going to do. That was the time four of my former colleagues in the laboratory came up and said, "Sir, you're a doctor, you know what test to ask, and you also built up the lab. You know what you can deliver. Why don't you start a lab? We will come and work with you. Not work for me, work with me." I still remember
Okay.
the sentence. I said, I don't even know if I start, when it will start making money, I can't. They said the three of them are girls, one was a boy. He said, you please pay only Ravi because he needs the money. Our husbands are earning right now. Whenever you can, you pay. They put this thought in my head. So that's why I'm an accidental laboratory man. So I decided to start the laboratory sometime. The whole process started in April 1985. On June 6th, 1985, I started Lister Laboratory. The rest is history. So I call
Yeah.
invasion of diagnostics just like the Normandy on June 6th.
Okay, so Lister was the beginning, and then
Yes.
you moving into
Yeah.
the.
See,
Hmm,
Lister was the beginning. It was 1985. For some reason, every 10 years, something has been happening in my life right from
okay,
1985. In fact, if you took it, goes back to 75. I was just
okay,
thinking this morning, 75 is the time I finished my MBBS. 65 is the time I wanted to be a doctor because my grandfather was in deathbed. And that was the time around Christine Bernard did heart transplant. I wanted to do transplant. It's all some infatuation at that. So 65, 75, 85, 95 came, and then we started Jeevan Blood Bank as a not-for-profit, which today people talk of CSR, which never, the three-letter word, three letters didn't exist at the time. That, thanks to my colleague, Dr. Saranya, with whom even today we work together in Jeevan after 46 years. Is that correct? 1985?
yeah,
We are
46
almost
years,
there, yeah, 46 years. So, but she
46
came up
years.
with some data which was really mind blowing data about people who who had tested positive for hepatitis B, C, and HIV, and ended up and also had a history of transfusion. We don't have a way of proving it, but they had transfusion. They also had this disease. Possibly, if not all, I think majority of them, the diseases caused by the transfusion they might have received. They had received. So that was the trigger for setting up Jeevan. That was in 1985. All went well, and then 95 to from 2000, around 2005, we started supporting a lot of children with thalassemia. And we knew at that time that thalassemia is a disease which is curable. A child which is receiving a blood transfusion every 3 weeks, 4 weeks for lifelong, and most of them, almost all of them, succumb when they reach the teen. Almost all, either due to the disease or due to the complications of transfusion.
Okay,
But whereas outside India, 60 to 80% of people with similar diseases are leading a normal life after in those days it used to be called a bone marrow transplant, or today we call it as a stem cell transplant. The reason is very simple, because in India our ethnicity is completely different from what the Caucasian is. So even today, with the 38 million, 40 million people registered as potential donors, the chances of an Indian finding a match is possibly less than a perfect match is less than 10%.
wow,
Simply
that
because
low.
simply because India does not have a large registry, and that something is the unfulfilled dream for me at this point. Before I leave, I would like to see a reasonable size registry which could help good number of children find a cure. We have several hundred transplant facilities set up. It is like having mega kitchens without vegetables and rice in the stores. That's exactly the situation right now. So
So
I, that's the story.
the
And
I just want to take you back to the early days of Jeevan, uh, when you had so many challenges in front of you. I'm not even talking of the financial bit. I'm talking of people not being aware of the amount of tests that had to be done to ensure that there is no contamination of the blood.
there is no Amar Akbar.
Storage. Exactly. There is no, there is proper storage. I mean, you were up against a mountain in every single aspect. So, how did you take it? What is the first set of things you did?
See, the very first thing when we decided to move into this and doing it, we are aware of the challenges. As far as we knew, there is only one challenge, which is financial. Because we know how to test. We have been running the laboratory for 10 years. We know the infrastructure. We know how to test. We have access to, we had access to equipments which are needed to do it. But the problem was purely financial. That's one part of the story as far as operations. But the most important thing is when the whole world has moved into what is called the blood component therapy. Because except in a situation where there is a rapid blood loss, even today, rapid blood loss, whole blood is never used
Okay.
for treatment. Either someone with, let's say, a dengue platelet counts are low, they need only the platelets. Someone who's anemic, who's going through an elective surgery, will possibly need only the red cells. So this is essentially called a single unit of blood can be split into minimum of 3 components. So when we started on 24th September 1985, we took a stand that we will not provide whole blood. We will just get this whole transfusion medicine specialty. There was no specialty at that time. It was an over-the-counter situation. So we said we will move them slowly towards using blood components so that the blood can be optimally used to more number of people who need it instead of sort of a thing. But
So,
we
what was
had
the discussion? Sorry, I'm just holding you back because I'm trying to go a little deeper. What were the kind of conversations you had with doctors to convert them? Because they said, I want whole blood. How would you convince them to use components?
no, it is not the
Or you
question
didn't
of
need
the.
to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We had to. We really had to struggle simply because it is not the question of their people using whole blood. We used to say that good old days we didn't have this milk in the sachet and sort of a thing. We used to have cows coming in front of the house, cows or buffaloes, and then milking it. You get the milk warm,
Yeah.
literally
Right.
warm. That is
Right.
how people wanted blood in early mid 80s. They
Oh,
wanted the blood to be collected simply like Amar Akbar Antony's story. It needs to be collected, and it needs to be collected at the side of the theatre, operation theatre. Now that comes the question of testing that needs to be done. So there were compromises. That's probably is the reason why we were seeing those results, which made us get into this blood banking scenario. So there was a lot of issues with reference to the blood safety, and uh, and we were able to think it's an uphill task, but we did succeed. We did succeed. It took us a few years. People slowly changed. I'm extremely happy that today, though sadly in 2017, we had to pull the curtains on the blood bank operations simply because it was bleeding us.
okay.
Because we couldn't sustain the blood bank with the reason that you said the amount of tests that needs to be done, which was far more than what is being practiced in every blood bank in Chennai. And naturally, it costs more. It's a not for profit. The cost needs to be reimbursed, or we need compensated with donations, which is not happening the way that we are expecting. So 21 years, we finally had to pull the shutters. It's sad, but 350,000 units of safe blood had been given, and we are happy for that. Even today, we are
And
meeting
I
people who
think you
receive blood.
basically changed the entire landscape for blood storage, donation, all
Yeah,
of that. Because I think the policy gazette came as a result of all the work that you did.
exactly. In fact, that's another very interesting thing. It's not an original idea. When I was in UK traveling, when I go for some travel conference or something, I do go and visit. The entire UK had just 4 blood centers. They call it blood centers. So in our language, we call it blood banks. Entire UK had 4 blood banks,
Okay.
centralized, huge operations, and the tested blood is distributed to the hospitals, which and they were stored there. Last minute tests, last mile tests like compatibility and then matching and all those things were done in the hospital. That means they were able to ensure the quality, their processes are uniform. So we said, why can't we do it? We had 2,200 blood banks in a country, which are collecting from 10 units in a month to 1,000 units a month. So we started explaining this to several governments, that several whichever political party it was, but it didn't go anywhere until one gentleman came and sat in a seat which looked like an accidental posting, and went back to him to explain the whole thing, and he asked, what's the problem in this? I said, we don't know, it's not moving. So he said, come back, and called everybody for a meeting at 3 o'clock that evening. I went out with the GO permitting us to start the first official blood storage center in a hospital, which is Sundara Medical Foundation. So we were providing the tested blood components rather, to the hospital which will store. And subsequently in 2001 it became a policy. Now we have several thousand blood storage centers in the country. I'm glad my colleagues and Jeevan could play a role in that.
Yeah, and not only play a role, I think you played a pivotal part in ensuring that the quality of blood in India got to a different standard altogether. Otherwise, like you said, so many presentations you made were simply things were not moving. It just required that one person sitting there in the right place at the right time
For some
to.
reason he was transferred the next week. Don't ask me why. He came
Anyway,
just to
this
do
got
this.
done. Okay, so so this is the part where you, now the other side, how did you convince people to donate? Because this I've heard, you've told me this in the past, that during drives when you suddenly get a lot of blood, and then there are patches when you don't get blood, so it's not part of the culture. Sometimes I wonder if not enough was done on communication by not Jeevan, because that would have been an uphill task. But I think even in society.
Well, no, unfortunately, the situation that you're explaining continues even today in 2023. The next 3 months, there is going to be difficulty in getting blood for patients because major sources of camps like the educational institutions will be closed. That is one. The second thing is, I think the whole problem is precipitated by bad planning and logistics. I think that's one of the thing that Chennai still doesn't have a central blood bank. Though the talk has been there, if you go on Google, talk about the central blood bank has been there repeatedly, like let's say tornadoes coming and going. Unfortunately, we don't see much, but nothing has happened. All that we need is sort of a centralized system to channel in, and also the sort of belief that blood banks. I'm talking about that today. There are only two not-for-profit facilities are existing in Chennai, with even being out, and I know what struggle they are going on to sort of sustain themselves, and there are a lot needs to be done, can be easily done, and if only somebody has the will to sit down and discuss and put the central blood bank in Chennai in place, and which can be easily replicated elsewhere.
Yeah, and like you said, the model exists. The UK has been having it for decades, like you said. So it's not
Every
as if you don't have a model that can be adopted and taken out here, right?
No, it's not just UK. Every country you looked over left,
Wow.
right, and thing, it's having it. The thing, Thailand has got, despite the HIV, one of the safest blood transfusion facility is in Thailand, and the other thing is South Africa, which came from high HIV in mid 80s, mid 90s, to almost the safest blood in the whole world today. They could transform. Then why can't we do that?
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder if that crisis is what ensures that things finally move. Because there was so much of a problem with the general population getting affected that measures had to be taken. I'm just wondering because,
No, the lethargy of people have to be blamed. If you need to benefit from something, you need to participate in that. If you are
right.
not, I'm sure you would have had a call. Several times I've received. Even last week, I had a call from someone unknown said that we need 4 units of blood. Can you tell me where I can get donors? I
Okay.
said, this is for whom? He said, it's for my brother. How many of you are siblings? He said, four of us. How many of you have offered to donate blood?
Okay.
Silence. So that is the situation.
Wow.
And everybody thinks that only if it hurts them, then they need to step up. That's a sad.
Wow.
I think the society has to be equally blamed or blamed more for the situation in the blood transfusion scenario.
So it's everything, it's like customs, beliefs, supply, and distribution. There are so many, though you've come a long way and you did so much for it in the 20, 21 years that Jeevan was in existence, it's like a battle that, sometimes I wonder, where did you find the resources to, mental resources to keep going?
Well, see, at the end of the day, if another 20, 30 patients receive blood, I think that's the one which keep us going
Right.
and fighting the battle the next day. So there is something happening every day to make us feel happy and go to bed with a sort of a happy mood, so that let's start the fight again tomorrow. Until that penultimate day when we really have to pull the shutters. Even
Right.
today, I had a call asking whether we have stock of red cells this morning. So I had to tell them, sorry, blood bank is no longer functional. So,
That
uh,
that isn't surprising. Your name is synonymous with, Jeevan and everything that it, at
well,
least in
Jeevan,
Chennai, America. No,
well,
you're
Jeevan
saying
still,
overall impact. Okay,
Jeevan very much exists, but we are doing something totally different.
as I said.
It's a metamorphosis which has happened in around 2005, 2007.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, okay, what was the next stage, doctor? You talked of the stem cell registry and
Yeah. So, so I was just telling about the difference between a child with thalassemia in India and outside India. And we realized that all that we need, if these children have to live, we need to have a large stem cell donor registry. If we have that, then all these children can be happen. Just imagine for a minute, as we talk, today there's going to be 100 or 200 children will be dying with thalassemia. This is going to happen every day. This is continue to happen into 23, 24, 25. Simply because despite all efforts, we have not succeeded in getting a large regional or a large national registry like it exists in other countries, including Sri Lanka, Singapore, Bangkok, and all those places, Thailand. So we need that registry in the people, registered people in the age group of, let's say, 18 to 45 years, uh, which is the biggest numbers as far as the whole world is concerned. More than 50% of population fall into that age group. All that India needs is a million people registered, typed, and a database ready. We have everything again. We developed the IT, we developed the infrastructure. We currently have about 20,000 people registered, and and we have got, so in the end of this week again we are going to have another, next week we will have one more donation happening for a patient, and we have done that several times, several dozen times in the past. But what is preventing us in creating that registry is something which is highly troubling, because here is something, if something has to happen to someone influential, like you said, then probably this country will wake up. Until then, it's it. What I'm suggesting that we should be doing is for our children and our grandchildren. Here is a curable disease. We are letting these children die. We can change it if we work together and create a large registry, which is not at all difficult. We hope that
that
it will
is
happen
the
one day.
that is really the tragic part, that it is not difficult and it's not among the most expensive things to do. So, is
The
it,
government of India
in
has to.
terms of expense, would be huge? Is that
Yeah, that's
one of
exactly
the
I was
things?
telling. It should be a budget of, for a million people, it should be a budget of something like about 400 to 500 crores over, let's say, 5 to 10 years. I'm not even saying it can be done in 2 years. This
Wow,
is not a big money for a country with a
it
budget
isn't.
of
Not at
so
all.
many lakh crores which is being done. Which
Exactly.
it's not at all difficult. It's not at all difficult. Everything, unfortunately, when we talk about make in India and all those things, this has to be made only in India. It cannot be made somewhere else, the registry brought here. Our DNA is different.
Okay.
So if we need to have these children have to have a quick and also easy access and affordable access. Let me touch the affordability a minute. My chance, and today I was told that I have blood cancer, I need to look for a donor and look at the 4 crore, 40 million database. My chances of finding is probably 10-15%. But even if I find one, I'm lucky, it's going to cost me 45,000 US dollars they get that single unit from wherever it is to my hospital for my treatment. I cannot afford it. I'm sure you cannot afford it. I'm not taking
Yeah.
the transplant cost into that. But you know
Right.
how much actually it costs? This is like blood again. Somebody is donating. There is a cost involved in the whole process, the testing, finding out the donor being fit, and then donor going through a process, tests, and then collecting it and delivering it to the hospital. It should never cost more than possibly 3 to 3.5 lakhs in a worst case scenario.
Wow.
So it is possible to deliver if you have a large registry under 3 lakhs, what is required for a child to get well, normal, and then continue with life. I don't know what they are going to invent and what they are going to give it with their native intelligence.
500, 600 crores is what? Today, 8,000 crores is a billion?
Forget it, we are talking 50 crores a year is the budget.
I mean, it's staggeringly,
I,
minuscule.
I
And
only
you
hope
find
somebody
that
is
you don't
listening.
find money for these things, but it's sometimes you wonder how the world gets its priorities in place. Or does it require, you've spent what, 30 years, 35 years battling this, right? You know so much more about what is involved and what needs to be done, and yet it's like not even moving a block, a stone uphill. It's like it just doesn't seem to move. And what you're saying is the costs are literally, today you have startups getting that kind of money in a one round and two
No,
rounds.
if I can if I can tell the I've had several people asking whether we can invest money. I said it
Okay.
amounts to blood money. I don't want in my hands.
Okay. Okay.
There people are
Yeah,
willing to
that's fair.
invest.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because once you do it, once the floodgates open, then like you said, it then gets into that other level, which is like if it's 1 unit of blood, then it's $45,000. And which again is available only to a very, very small group of people. So that's where the so what I'm wondering is how did you maintain? Now, it is one thing to do a job. For most of us, our challenges are relatively simple. Will I get a promotion next year? Will I, buy that house? And then you opt to do something like this, which is, most of us would even say, why would you bother? But then we are so grateful that you do things. There are people like you who do these things because that's what makes the rest of the world livable.
Venu, it's not a correction. If I am standing on the shoulder of few hundreds of my own past,
Yes,
present
that's
colleagues,
agreed.
and but if they are not so dedicated, some most of them are with me for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. It is that dedication and equally the support of my family and their families in understanding what we are doing. So, but I think that is what keeping us going, with the hope that there will be someone who will even help Jeevan, adding 10,000 donors a year, which probably will be, we are talking about 5 crores a year. So I'm saying one Jeevan is not enough. One Jeevan BDQ registry is not enough. Cannot do what I've been telling. Probably we need 4 regional registries which need to become a consortium at national level. The proposals are all sitting in the health ministry's table for the last 10 years. How it can be done? Let's hope that it happens sooner than
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. We'll just take a minute because this person, she's asked the question early on, but I just said, since you were in a flow, I said I'd come back to it.
Oh, uh, okay. Fun. I didn't do photography to pay my bills. It is my way of being, trying to be creative, and my way of letting my steam through the lens into the nature. But if you ask me, can you be a photographer and still make money and make living? The answer is yes. It depends on which genre you are in. and I don't want to get into that in this discussion.
Yeah, but that is, I think you have another one of your. She's talked about your interesting story of a
Oh,
medical entrepreneur.
oh, thank you, Rama. Rama, you played a great role in Jeevan's life. It's Jeevan's life, no pun intended. And in fact, she and her team were responsible for Jeevan becoming the first blood bank in the country to be certified by
Wow.
ISO.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, so like you said, there have been several well wishers and a whole lot of support that you've got from people along your journey. But like you said, at certain points, you wonder why projects like these, which are so truly required, which is like you need a registry. While you were talking, one of the things that came to me was you did the enrollment of Aadhaar. You went into biometrics. If you had codified the entire set of what is the blood group that the person belongs to, I'm saying along with this,
It is very easy to create a database, but databases doesn't solve the saved lives.
okay,
I'm reminded of one of the film. This thing I don't know which film, Tamil film is that. Senthil's thing about the database and which temple gives what food and what time and what days. It's a question of application of the database, which is more important
yes,
than creating a database. So
yeah,
the mindset of people have to change. That can be only done through constant education, and I honestly believe the media has a lot more to play, and unfortunately that is not happening. The public service announcements, which are the PSAs, which were there in those years, and we had people like Anil Kumble, Rahul Dravid, and all those people coming on and doing what the bit. It's all available still on the YouTube. Any blood bank want to use it, if it's a not for profit, they can do it. We don't have. We have great thing. One of the well-known creators, Sharad Aksar, you must be knowing.
yeah, yeah,
Sharad played a large role in Jeevan's campaigns in the good old days. And I know at some point of time you contributed a thing to
yeah.
what
That
Jeevan
was
was
very,
doing.
very small. Yeah,
No,
but
no. It's not a thing. We ask people what they can do. We don't ask some people money. We go and ask somebody that if you are on the thing, why don't you help us to do this and then thing. We asked billboard people in those days that between changing billboards,
yes,
they'll put up a vinyl. I
right,
still remember Sampath. So between the thing, this donate blood should circulate is one in the Gemini. We
yes,
said blood should circulate. That was Century Advertising. So
yeah,
we go and ask people, and they were all party to it. But at some point, still vitamin M is required to keep running. That's where we
yeah.
fell short.
No, and I think that's the point. You can't. The problem is exactly the opposite when it comes to products that need to be distributed far and wide. They'll reach the remotest corners of the country, and yet something which is so essential, which can be sorted out, it's as if we don't have the means or the system to get this going, even though, like you said, it is so essential. It's not as if, like you were saying, that family which suddenly required blood and the siblings themselves were hesitating. It's again because of mental conditioning. It's not because it's not available. There is this whole thing which needs to be broken
They,
about.
they think
Uh,
they think if you pay money you can get blood, but that's not the case.
that's not the case. Yeah, that's true. And how little people know about what are the complications or what is their actual blood group and is it negative, positive? How do you. Again, I think, I don't know if it's too many things to think about or it gets relegated to the background because it's not an immediate priority if things are going on okay.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, but then you said that when you started this whole thing off, everything continued because of the support that you got from friends, family, associates, a whole lot of doctors, which got it going. Now, the change that you see, what is the next level of change? If you were to describe 5 steps that need to be taken, what do you think is the most important step that first needs to be taken to organize the entire thing? Central blood bank is one.
One, I'll take it in two pillars. The one pillar is, of course, as I was talking, the blood donor registry, stem cell donor registry for people in the age group of 18 to 45 to come up and register. And once they register, this 3 ml of blood is taken to determine their HLA type, and it's in the database. And if there is a match, then only they will call. Most of them won't be even called during their lifetime. But the question is that staying committed, if you are a match, you need to move forward to donate. But that is where across the world, and India is no different, when there is a child, they say 10 children have 10 different people are match. If you go back to these people who registered 1 year back, 5 year back, 10 year back, almost 6 out of 10 will not donate, knowing pretty well those 6 children are going to die. It is a fact even today. It is a global problem, and India is not different. In India, our experience is that it is not in almost, let's say out of the 6, 4 would like to donate, but the parents will not allow the son or daughter to donate. So this essentially means we need to educate the society. There needs to be a larger agenda, the larger effort put in to sort of change the mindset of people. This is as far as the registry is concerned. The blood bank is concerned, what we today need is honestly any blood bank which collects less than 300 blood donations a month, which amounts to 80%, over 80% of blood banks, licensed blood banks in this country, cannot deliver blood safety because it is not viable. So all these things, there needs to be centralized blood banks or regional blood banks, and then we'll have satellite blood storage centers. Somebody might turn around and say that it's existing, but still 80% of blood banks which are existing, licensed, collect less than 300 units, which they cannot use the appropriate technology to ensure blood safety. So there is a compelling need for a central blood bank and distributed blood product like any other thing. There is a manufacturing, logistics,
Yeah.
and cold chain and distribution. So I think these are the two things which I would like to see before I exit.
And in terms of education, how do you? I think it's a very, very deep rooted problem because it's like, I think one of the problems we got around was the donation of corneas, because they went very heavily on. Aishwarya Rai came up with those, and that was a consistent thing. And maybe it was the celebrity, the thing which got through. And like you said, you have used celebrities. But the point is, you can't afford to drop off, especially in today's world. It needs somebody who's sort of absolutely passionate about doing this day in and day out. If you have to change minds, because it's a very, very slow process. Like you said, even if the person is willing, the parents may not be willing. And
Uh, yeah, go ahead. You finish then.
no, that's I
Okay.
finished.
No,
I
I
Yeah,
see. It is. It's a daunting task which cannot see if you are able to play for 10-second videos in the IP in between the IPL or something like that, telling repeatedly the same thing again and again and again and again. End of the evening, you get convinced that this is good. I was just seeing someone talking about a health, quote unquote, health drink, which now added one more thing of saying that it gives you immunity. Whereas the pack of thing contains 50% is sugar and rest
yes,
of it is additives. And I don't know how that sugar gives you immunity or sugar gives you proteins. This is people are spending crores and thousands of crores to
yes,
buy that product and drink.
right.
So end of the day, all that I learnt about that particular, it's still article and the video that I saw, is that you need to tell the story right. There are people at the other end to take it. So that exactly the convincing stories have to come with reference to blood donation and stem cell donation.
And it's a because it's a what do you say, societal change. There are attitudes and there are, codes within, embedded deep within, as to, your people are taking the essence of your marrow, bone marrow transplant. So all of these things, the problem is we have all these overlaps. We have several things that are spoken about which affect how we see this. I mean, I think organ donation is another thing which they're fighting battles on all fronts on that, because
Talking of organ donation, I think one more thing on the organ donation side that needs to be done is the kith and kin, the relatives who need to be educated more than the person who
yes,
donates.
yes,
Sign up,
very true.
because after he is gone, it's they are the people, either they are allowing the donation or stopping the donation.
Yes,
There again,
very
the
true.
education has to shift from after the registration. I think it should go to the family.
Yeah. And recently, I think, based on this, exactly what you're saying, though the person had made up his mind, his mother had said that she wanted to give her body away to charity, to the hospital. And then the problem was that they had not done the registration earlier. And then the word from relatives who felt that if you don't have a body, how can you do the rituals? So then there are so many layers of this, Dr. Srinivasan, because it's not, that ties into belief, that ties into afterlife, that ties into what your, so it's not an easy problem to sort of manage at several levels, right?
Agree with you. Agree with you.
Yeah, because it's I'm sure you've heard this in some form or the other at every
No,
stage, or
no. The other side is also, I have seen at least a couple of my friends' parents who wanted to donate to for the anatomy department, and they succeeded. So the positive side of respecting what the parents, the person who died wanted, it has happened. But in a lot of things, yes, rituals take priority over somebody's wish. So I don't think we have a clear answer for that at this stage. Unfortunately, the person who wanted to donate cannot get up and say, "Shut up! I wanted my body to be given to the anatomy department for dissection." So
yeah,
it's not going to happen.
very true. No, it's really one of those things which it doesn't have. There are no easy answers. It involves tackling it at so many levels. It's not just about telling people that you need to donate blood, because that is easy to say, but to actually make it happen, and like you said, this very practical aspect that 80% of blood banks don't have collect more than 300 units is surprising. That too in a country, in a city which has what, 9 million people,
No, it's
and
not at
that's
all difficult. It's see if you look at what's the number of people who are eligible to vote. There's a 60% of the people who are eligible to vote are eligible to donate. So
right.
that is the truth. So it's
Yeah.
it's education, drilling the fact, changing the attitude. I think it
Yeah.
can be done only with a good media program. There's no other way that this can be changed.
Yeah, it needs uh, tackling at several levels. Okay, I think we've gone. You've spent your entire lifetime trying to change minds, trying to change policy, trying to ensure that the blood that is distributed to the people who desperately need it is something that preserves life, gets them back to health. But I think let's sort of close on something that you have, the photography aspect, because I'm sure that is one thing which we started with that, and we're coming back to. So again, why nature? Why not profiles? Why not? Did you look at various aspects, or do you feel?
No, the question is the two areas where I was interested. One was wildlife, and the other one was landscapes. So when I started with wildlife, like any wildlife photographer had the long lenses of 600 mm, this that. I did that thing. At one point of time, I felt this happened in Serengeti. In one of those trips, I was just looking through the lens, and suddenly it dawned on me what a tunnel vision that I have. I've just isolated everything else which is in front of me, and I'm just looking through a tube into a very small portion of the place, the whole thing. So I folded the whole thing, kept it aside, and the next few hours I did not take my camera out. What I eyes could see, I was just registering. That was the time it dawned. It's time for me to move out of from the long lenses to start looking at things in a wider perspective. The moment you become wider, it becomes wildscapes and landscapes, and that's how. But most importantly, you showed one picture, which was my first trek into Annapurna Base Camp. I fell in love with the mountains, the Himalaya. The moment I saw what was unfolding in front of me in 2006, I've made probably close to 15 or 16 trips to the Himalaya in different regions and different temperatures at minus 40s, climbing 15,000 feet at minus 10. So it's an amazing experience. And of course, again, as a team, I couldn't have done alone unless I had my trusted friend Rahul with me in every single episode. He knew the mountains like the back of his hand. He is a mountaineer, so that was fantastic. He was there, so I was willing to surrender my life and follow what he said to get the best image that's possible. So, bottom line here is that follow the passion, be creative, and that should be add on to whatever you are doing that gives you the bread, butter, and jam. So learn a hobby. I think that's the parting message.
And what about, if there are people out here who are listening or who will watch the show at some point in time, if they wanted to get into taking the work you've already done forward, what is it that, they have to be doctors, or is it something else that can be done? Is it mobilizing people? Is it?
Yeah. No, need not be doctors. I'll tell you, there's no need to be a doctor. Everybody can contribute in a different way. Each one has got a thing. As I said, the most important thing is educating people. Education can come through only communication. So if you're strong in communicating, whether you're an amateur or a professional, whatever it is, if you have ideas in communicating, I'll be only too happy to interact with them. I can be reached at Srinivasan at jeevan.org. So I'll be only too happy, because let's understand, only by working together, we have to solve a problem which is going to hit all of us at some day or other, or somebody known to us or close to us. I think only we need to solve this problem working together and working ourselves. So let's put our heads together, whatever way each one could contribute. Doctors will do their job. They will do the transplants if the match is there. So, but I think we need to create the sort of the large registry. Finance is one, funds are required. So there are several ways it can be done. We can always discuss this.
So
Reach
social
out.
media needs a blood donation influencer. That slot is open. I think it's one of those things
Was
that,
and the stem cell donation influencer.
yeah, yeah. And
People people who have been donating platelets. There are people who donate platelets regularly. I would urge them to come ahead and register. You go through the website bethecure.in, BETHECURE.in. You have all the information available there. Just drop us a mail and then we'll start communicating how we can take this forward.
wonderful, doctor. It's a life lived with purpose, with so many goals attained, so much more to be done. But I think what I see right through is a consistent thread. And I think your life is really, uh, you know, a wonderful example of how it requires dedication of not just 1 or 2 years, but a lifetime to bring about real change. And for a lot of people who believe that change will happen if I just put in 2 or 3 years into it, you're you're a clear example of how much needs to be done.
All these things, would not have happened if my first job was different. Looking back, the first job made all these things happen. I am eternally thankful for what happened at that time. in the first job.
Okay.
So, still going with the title, I think the first job is responsible for where I am today and where blood safety and bone marrow transplant is today. I think, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone
Thank
who have
you.
been in the path, and thanks, Venu, for having me on this show.
It's been a pleasure and an honor, like I said, Dr. Srinivasan. And if we've been able to reach a few more people on this wonderful journey of yours, I think this is, one of the fulfillments that we'll have. Thank you.
Thank you. Jai Hind.
Jai. That was Dr. Srinivasan. And he has really dedicated his entire life to this one mission. And if we had a few more people who will take up the baton from here, I think the potential for change is enormous. As we've seen, there's a whole lot of work that still needs to be done. And it really falls upon or comes to the younger generation who believe that this is possible. Thank you for watching, and please do subscribe for more episodes that we bring to you. Thank you.